Hi, I'm Judith Dreyer. Thank you for joining me for this podcast series, The Holistic Nature of Us. My intent is to take us, you and I, into a better understanding of the concepts behind our holistic nature and how that ties directly to the holistic nature of the world around us. How can we connect the dots in practical ways that we are nature and nature is in us? I will be featuring authors and educators, practitioners, and others whose passion for this earth helps us create bridges. We'll see what's trending, what's relevant to our world today, not just for land use, but to connect the dots between ourselves and nature. It's time for practical action and profound interchange so our natural world is valued once again. And today I'm delighted to introduce you to Joam Palmer. She is the founder and director of the Institute of Sustainable Nutrition and owner of Real Food Matters, LLC. She has been planting the seeds of Real Food Matters for decades through educational programs presented to schools, businesses, organizations, families, and individuals. Welcome, Joan. I'm delighted to have you today.
Thank you, Judith. I'm delighted to be here.
So, Joan, you're the founder of the Institute of Sustainable Nutrition. Tell us about your school, how you came to create this program, which, by the way, listeners, is a very unique and probably a very timely program, and I'm excited to have you tell us more about it.
Thank you. Well, when I finished my master's degree in human nutrition, I started looking around at what I wanted to do with that. And I was kind of hoping to find a program that connected all of the pieces that I didn't get from my formal education. I wanted to maybe teach there, but I also wanted to take classes at a place that brought all of these aspects together, and it didn't exist. And so over time, I realized it was kind of my vision and my dream, and that it was going to have to come from me. So from that, we created the Institute of Sustainable Nutrition with the help of some really amazing students and faculty. And what we did was we kind of looked at all the pieces of food, not just the didactic piece of it that we get in our formal education, but the parts that are really about real food. And real food matters. So we took the science of nutrition and we looked at all of the aspects of inflammation, detoxification, the immune system, all of that sort of thing. And we decided to try and pull that together with the parts that were really important for that. And that was the gardening. And so we developed sustainable regenerative gardening practices where we teach how to make your own amendments, how to really kind of understand the soil as a whole and not as a whole, and how it kind of knows what to do, how to get out of the way, I guess, when working with it, and yet still be able to feed the soil again and try to replenish what has been taken out over all these years. From that, we move into the kitchen and we teach culinary skills from really basics. We do fermentation. We do we start with something as simple as soups, which I think are some of the best medicine we have. Mm-hmm. A really great way of incorporating things straight from the garden into the kitchen, extending the harvest, using the herbs. It's just, to me, a powerhouse of a food, especially here in New England when it starts getting cold. And then we moved into what we call kitchen medicine, and that's using food and herbs to create formulas to both prevention and healing formulas that once were part of every household. People always knew what to use when someone got a cold or a fever or the flu. Any of those things, they had remedies, and they were quite effective, and they're still used around the world. But we seem to have poo-pooed those, and they have kind of been lost. And it's interesting to watch people that come to this country with their families. First generation comes with all this incredible traditional knowledge, and by the next generation it's gone because people are embarrassed and feel that it's not sophisticated, and so those traditions don't get passed down. It's such a shame. I always tell people, if they have anyone in their family still alive, to sit with them and ask them for the remedies and write them down. Mm-hmm. It would be a fascinating book. But then within all of those things, we do forage. We go out, we teach our students about the weeds in the meadows, in their front yard, in the cracks of the sidewalk, and mm-hmm. try to teach them to look at things differently. They learn that what is an annoying weed to many is actually a really nutrient-dense food or has medicinal qualities that they should really understand. And I think that simple act is such a wow for people, because they see something they've stepped on forever or battled with, and they learn what that can do, and they fall in love.
Yeah, I hear you. I know that I've done a lot of field walks myself here and there in my own travels, and people are always amazed at what's right beneath their feet. My native elders always said, what you have growing under your feet is probably what you need, but we've forgotten how to pay attention to that. And yards are different. I could give you a story about a woman who her husband had a skin issue, and she called me up as a colleague and said, what would I recommend? And I said, well, burdock root, is the first thing that comes to my mind. And she started to laugh, and her whole front yard was filled with burdock root, and she had no idea how to use it. Meanwhile, his remedy was right there. So I bet your students get excited when they go home so they can discover what's in their own yards.
Yeah, we always tell them that it comes with a cautionary note that they have to keep their eye on the road when they're driving, because what ends up happening is you start being able to ID things in the fields that you drive by every day, and mm-hmm. and you get so excited that you turn your head, and we're always like, okay, just make sure you keep your eye on the road and, or pull over.
Yes, those are good, wise words. So tell me more about getting folks into the kitchen. Now, you said that soups, I agree with you. Soups are like such a great way to get food as our medicine and medicine as our food. We forget that many of our common foods are medicine as well, not just the herbs that we don't want to talk about or the weeds we don't want to talk about.
Right. The culinary, this year we've had a lot of guest speakers in that area. We get a gentleman from up in Massachusetts who he's been nominated for the James Beard Award for 6 years running for his incredible locally milled sourdough breads. They're true 24-hour fermented sourdoughs, and he has a wood-fired oven, and he makes just incredible numbers of bread. So he comes and teaches a class with us, and he's kind of one of the favorites. And we have a woman who comes from a farm where she pastures her cows and processes raw milk. And so she comes and does a talk about the difference between, pastured dairy versus CAFO dairy, and raw versus processed dairy, and does a butter making and a cheese making class. And then we had a guest chef that used to come, who we this year have hired on to be our full-time chef. So he works in a lot of the classes. But we do things like I said earlier, the fermentation. And one of the things that we do with that, and with the soups and with some of these other classes, is try to teach students how to close the waste gap. And, that is a big piece of being sustainable is, what do you do with all those scraps when you're preparing this food? And I mean, composting is lovely and really important, but, you can also throw the stems of the shiitake mushrooms and the ends of your carrots and your onions and into a bag that you store in your freezer that you later pull out and make your broth with that. To not waste it, when we spend the money and buy expensive organic citrus, and to just squeeze the juice out of that feels really wasteful. And what we do is we first zest all of the citrus that we're going to use if we're only using the juice, and save that. We use that in salts and to flavor different things, oils and things like that. And that can last quite a while. You can freeze that or use it in, save it in an oil. And it's just closing those waste gaps. We take some of these things and we make some nutrient-rich products with it when we get into the unit on minerals. So those are the kinds of things we do in there, trying to get them to use more culinary herbs in their cooking, those types of things.
Years ago I was next to a camp in the Northwest Hills of Connecticut, and some of the instructors came in, and they actually had a song, which I cannot find, called "Where is Away?" We always say throw it away, but where is away? Forget about the packaging and the plastics and all of that. But I love your suggestion of using it in another form, your kitchen scraps, to make those broths out of. That's such a great idea.
And that also goes into our gardening practices. We do the same. We use some of these waste products to actually make amendments for the garden. One being eggshells. We do, eggshells are so rich in calcium and other minerals, and we just throw them out. And yet they're great in the compost again, but, fermented, they really extract, or not even fermented, I would say using the vinegars, you can extract a lot of those minerals and use them both for human and for the garden. So
that's interesting. Do you have any recipes up on your website, or is this something that your students get in the program?
They get in the program. We're really fabulous at what we do. We're not really fabulous at the technology end of things as far as our website goes. We do have people that are going to work on that for us this year, but yeah, we're busy doing all of these other things, and we don't tend to focus on all of that. But
I can imagine gardening alone, and to create the gardens that you have with the intention and the mindfulness that you put into it is time consuming. It really is.
It is, and it's easy to get sidetracked into forgetting what really is important when we're doing a school, when you're doing a business, when you're living your life. There are so many areas you can get sidetracked in, and all those sweet, simple things do get lost sometimes. And so you have to make those decisions. And I think the going and hunting for the mushrooms, and the going and harvesting the weeds, and or just going out and harvesting a couple of leaves from the garden and going and making a tea, they seem so much more important than my perfection on my website.
Well, I have to agree with you, because again, that's where our heart is, and anything that makes our heart sing is going to feed us in a different way. And I think that's what life is all about too, balancing is what I'm getting at. So if we're talking about balance, let's go back to our digestive system, the gut. We know the soil has a digestive system, but we have a digestive system, and I wanted to ask you to talk about the gut biome a little bit.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. What's really fascinating to me is to look at the research being done in the soil realm, to look at the biology in the soil. And like Nigel had said, the little we know of all the things in there, and then to look at the human side of it, and it's exactly the same. We really don't know a lot. We are learning rapidly, but we don't know a lot about the microbiome in humans, and it seems that in modern science, it feels so brand new. Although we've been fermenting our foods forever to get the microbes into our body. So it's really important. We have more DNA from microbes in our bodies than we have our own DNA, which is quite amazing to think about. We're more bacteria than we are us.
Yeah.
And they so influence who we are. They actually, some of these microbes can actually help process certain nutrients in the body, vitamin K for one, and B vitamins. And they help us to be able to they make those more bioavailable to us. Just like adding biology to your soil makes the nutrients more bioavailable to the plants. So we're so connected. And then looking at the importance of introducing them regularly. Things that kill it are stress and sugar and processed foods. And so you want to be eating those all the time. They're really important for the immune system. And that, having a lot of microbes in the body, along with having adequate levels of vitamin D, are two of the simple, best preventions for the flu. And for your immune system in general, to keep yourself healthy from lots of different ailments. They are part of the inflammatory system. They help keep inflammation down. There's a big link now with autism and the gut. And, it really influences, it's very much connected to our serotonin, which is what makes us feel good. It's one of our hormones that makes us feel happy and good. And when our microbes aren't where they should be, it can add to depression. The inflammation goes up, which adds to depression. It can add to all kinds of just not feeling well. And so there's just a huge link in that whole realm. Another interesting thing is there is actually a microbe in the soil that mimics serotonin. So by working in the garden, when you're out there and you're sitting working, you're just weeding and you've got a big grin, and being out there, not only are you getting that exposure from the sun that makes us feel really good, but also the microbes are part of us, and it influences that also, which I think is a really interesting thought. And they also help detoxify heavy metals. So, and they do that in the soil as well as in our human body. So they are so important.
You're right. And what we forget is in the holistic model is that if one part is weak, the whole suffers. And the dot I'm trying to connect is we have not taken care of the soil. We have not taken care of the invaluable topsoil that's our lifeblood on this planet. We haven't been good stewards, and we wonder why we have such suffering going on health-wise in many areas of the planet as well. As soon as there's the introduction of, and you and I know this, as soon as there's the introduction of white flour and white sugar to any culture, their health goes down. And we have lots of scientific studies to prove that. Their teeth suffer, their mood suffers, their biology suffers, and yet we still insist on this tremendous input of processed food, which is basically dead food. And that's another concept that's hard for people to understand. Well, how can it be dead if I'm eating it and I'm alive? That's the answer I get. Well, yeah, you're getting carbohydrate, but you keep using up your own minerals in your bank account because you're not adding more to it. And I love what Nigel said on a previous podcast, that he wants to make the soil better than when he started, and trees do that. I had no idea, but when a tree dies in the forest, it gives back 5 times more than it took in its given life.
Yeah, and then that when you read that book, The Hidden Life of Trees, and they talk about how they take care of each other,
Yeah.
even though they're competing in some respects, they still realize that they are all interconnected and need each other too.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will give of themselves to help another, and by feeding them, and it's just fascinating.
It
Plants are
is.
fascinating.
It is. And isn't it great that we've got folks who have done, like in The Hidden Life of Trees, he's done 30 years of research in a specific forest. He has firsthand experience that he's relating to us, and then he can relate the science to us as well. For some reason, we can't go by the folkloric tradition as much in some ways, and we're busting through that by the work that you're doing. You're marrying the science with the art of cooking and the science of feeling well.
Yeah, I love when we know traditional cultures have used certain things and have certain beliefs and about foods or herbs or whatever, and then Western science has this great epiphany and uncovers that it's true. I love when that happens because I think of things like astragalus root, which has been the Chinese have used for 2,000 years, and they said how it really increases qi or someone's life force. And Western science has just started to uncover the fact that it may actually do just that, that it with, I don't want to go into all this science detail, but with the telomeres on our, that it actually helps to maybe cap and maybe even grow those telomeres back, which is quite fascinating. And how did they know that 2,000 years ago? Mm-hmm. It's just, I love when that happens.
I do too, and we forget that what's been passed down has passed the test of time. We wouldn't still be using it if it didn't work,
Right.
and
Right.
we just haven't married the language together with whatever, with today's language. And when we look at the old herbals, they used the language of the day, so they were trying to get rid of quote unquote evil spirits. Well, they had no other words for viruses and bacteria, and if we, you know, fill in the blank with viruses and bacteria, they have that property. And as you said, science is starting to put that all together, which is exciting.
Yes.
So, uh, Joan, what I'd like you to do is to give us a couple of tips that we can take home, or my listeners can take home today.
Okay. Well, I would start with, we have a saying, we have beautiful T-shirts that we made with our logo. I think our logo is really beautiful. And on the back of the T-shirts, we have a saying that that I put on everything, and it's, you can pay the farmer now or the doctor later, because real food matters. And so I would say the first thing is to learn to eat real food. There are a lot of militant ways of eating these days, but even these people that think they're really doing a great service to the environment and to their health and the health of those around them by the way they're eating, it still a lot of times can contain a lot of processed foods. And processed foods are not only hard on the human body, but they are extremely difficult for the environment. The packaging, when we think about things that are grown in monocultures that have tilled the soil, releasing the carbon, killing the microbes, creating crops that require chemicals in order to survive, herbicides, pesticides, the impact on the environment is huge. When you eat real food, and as clean as you can afford to eat it, which organic is actually cheaper if all things were equal, but with our subsidies, and it's not necessarily that way in the supermarkets. But to eat real food is the least impact on the environment. To make your food and use real food.
Mm-hmm. Good tip.
Second one, learn to cook. And we have stopped cooking. Some people think that it's not glamorous to cook. I think it is so much fun to have people over where everyone brings something they've made, or go to someone's house who's making beautiful food for you. Or I think learning to cook it's a very enriching community thing to do. And when you do it, to be able to start incorporating a lot of our herbs, our culinary herbs, into the food. Culinary herbs are rich in antioxidants, which help fight all of those age-causing, damaging things from happening in our bodies. They're high. In fact, oregano has more antioxidant power than blueberries. Adding those kinds of things to our food is really, really important, and also helps your immune system. They're very antimicrobial, which means adding them can help prevent certain illnesses. If your body is trying to fight them off, it really aids in that battle against the colds and flus this time of year. And it's fun to do together. If you don't know how, I say get some friends together and learn together. It could be quite fun. I think that it is a great community building thing.
I agree with you.
That's how we start the school, is we start by all preparing a meal together, and just feeling that bonding and that sense of learning from each other and smelling, and it's part of the digestion. It's part of the health of the body, is to prepare that together. And the last thing I guess I would say is to learn to drink, especially coming up this time of year, learn to drink teas. And I'm not talking just black tea, although black, green, those are beautiful things. Coffee is even lovely. It has a lot of medicinal properties to it. But teas are simple. They're a simple introduction into bringing medicine into your food. They remind me of soup. They're the other end of soup for me. When we're coming up to the holidays and you tend to overeat and you get, that feeling of indigestion after a meal, going to other people's homes sometimes can do that when you're eating other people's foods. But there are simple things like fennel seed, mints. And I'm not talking about buying tea bags, although those are fine. They aren't really the best quality, and they aren't really the best amount. And there's so many herb shops these days around and online that you can buy a little quantity of loose herb and make a tea, either in a small teapot or in a tea ball, and really enjoy those. So mints are really great for digestion, along with the fennel. And then the other thing I think of is stress. Stress is plays such a key role in most of our diseases. It causes inflammation. It can undo the strongest of people. And so I like to think of ways of finding teas that help with that stress in that really sweet, simple way. And one that comes to mind always is lemon balm. People seem to love that plant, and it really does have the ability to calm us and settle the stomach. It's in the mint family, very easy to grow, beautiful plant. And when you grow it, you have lots to dry and for the winter. And the other one I think of is Tulsi, which is really pretty easy to grow in this area also.
Okay.
And its other name is sacred or holy basil. And it's got an incredible ability to work with the stress response and bring you back into balance. And it's quite delicious. I know most people adore that tea. It's got a really interesting smell and flavor, and a great one to incorporate in. And then the other one that everybody seems to know since childhood of reading Peter Rabbit is chamomile.
Mm-hmm.
And although I can't drink that one, I seem to react. It's in the family of the ragweed, and so that is a little tough for me, sadly, but it really settles the stomach and helps you to sleep. All three of these actually are great for helping you to sleep. So
Those are great. Those are great suggestions. And you're right. And lemon balm will grow abundantly from one little cutting. So that's a very easy one to put in your garden. And chamomile is easy to grow. And Tulsi's a new one for me. I'm going to have to look into that for next year and see if I can get some growing in my garden. So those are great, Joan. I really appreciate it. And before we go, how about giving us your contact information and when does the school start and the dates, etc.?
okay, yeah, the school is one weekend a month, and it runs from September through July. It's all day Saturday, Sunday, and it's started in September, will end in July. We do have other workshops coming up. They have not been posted into the website, but we have a really fabulous one coming up in December or January that is called Trees for Teas. And if people think that everything is dead and gone and you can't get anything outside, we take you out and show you the abundance of the world around us by using some of the most common plants in our area that are nutritious during the winter. So anyway, our website is www.TIOSN.com. That was the acronym for the school. And the phone number is 860-764-9070.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a great discussion, practical tips, and again, tying everything into the holistic model, because if a part of us is not well, not up to par, our whole biology suffers. And that's our mental, our spiritual, our emotional bodies don't feel right. But the same thing happens out in nature. So thank you. I want to thank you again for joining us here at the Holistic Nature of Us. I'm really grateful for your tips and all your practical advice. This is Judith Dreyer. I'm the author of At the Gardenscape book and blog. My book is available through my website, which is www.judithdreyer.com, as well as several distribution arms such as Amazon, Nook, Goodreads, and more. I'd like to remind all of you that a transcript is available for each podcast, and please like and share the podcast. Let's support each other and get the word out. Remember, now is the time for practical action and profound interchange so we can value our world once again. Enjoy your day.